Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're going to be talking all about Breath of the Wild's sequel. Some people are calling it Breath of the Wild 2. That's not an official name. They don't even call it that on the trailer. It's the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. It's, you know, it's catchy. Yeah, we know almost nothing about this, and certainly nothing concrete, so we thought we'd have just some absolute mindless speculation. Because why not? And as you might have already guessed, I am not alone. I am joined by Mr. Zibbity Zibzob Zedon and Mr. Jibbity Jibjob John.
Ha!
Hi.
Oh my gosh, I thought I was still in bed.
It is early for you, isn't it, Zeon? Oh, but anyway, we've got Breath of the Wild to talk about. That's any reason to get out of bed, I think. So, what is it? It's the year 2021. We have heard absolutely nothing about the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild since the first trailer dropped, which was an awfully long time ago. I think it was the 11th of June 2019. In fact, I know that because I'm literally looking at the date right now. It's, what is it, like a minute and a half long? And most of that, well, not most of that, but a fair chunk of that is just a bit of text saying the sequel to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is now in development. So we don't actually have an awful lot to go on. We don't have any release window. We don't know anything about the plot. Although what we do know is, well, we can garner some things from the footage. So should we start with that? Should we start with that? Let's all watch the trailer together, shall we? All in real time. So are you ready? Are you ready, children?
Oh, that timed so perfect.
Oh, good. Okay, so we got this swirly intro, little wormy things that appear to be made of light or something. I've seen people refer to this as being a script, some sort of language. I think that's reasonable. Overall,
yeah. Sheikah text, yeah.
Yeah,
and
possibly.
We've got the drawings on the walls, which look very similar to the depiction shown in Impa's story. Where they show
and
the ceiling
we just
of
saw just then there's like an arm gripping onto the torso. The rat dies. Sad.
F in the chat for the rat.
Also, what animal are they using to carry all the equipment right now?
I don't know, and we get a better look at the corpse here, and we can see some Gerudo symbols. And now it's too quick to even. We can't talk about this. Oh, look who it is. Look who it is. Gerudo symbols. It's, well, I mean, I'm just going to say it's fairly clear that this is somebody at least attributed to Ganondorf, although more likely Ganondorf himself. Because, you know, the Gerudo symbols, the
Maybe
red hair.
His baby boy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly certain. I'm not absolutely sure because it's Nintendo at the end of the day, but I think we can be fairly confident that that is Ganondorf. Can we agree on that?
Yeah, there's no doubt.
I mean, there is some doubt. It's Nintendo. It might be a new original character. Do not steal.
Don't do it. This is definitely the kind of trailer that, like, you watch it once and then you almost have to go back and pause your way through the whole thing, because there's so many quick cuts and there's so much to talk about and try to figure out, but we don't really have answers for anything.
Yeah, it's very sort of, at the same time it feels like it's showing us quite a lot, and at the same time almost nothing. But one thing I do want to focus on for the first part of our little chatette, if I can go back a few frames so I can actually see it. There we go. We can see Link's arm appears to be maybe being taken over by that arm that we saw gripping onto Ganondorf's torso, which, I mean, this is pure speculation. That's what the whole video is. It sort of reminds me of the Master Sword sealing, you know, it's the Blade of Evil's Bane. Is this something like that is able to keep Ganondorf at bay somehow?
I mean, I'd think so, yeah. People have seen that all the swirly lines are Sheikah text. So this is very likely the Sheikah's just trying to seal Ganon. And I'm guessing when Link gets the hand, he's probably freeing him while doing so. Or maybe Ganon's somehow taken over the hand. Because we also see his Dark Malice at the bottom of the screen as well, which is kind of fighting with the green Sheikah lights. So it's hard to see what's going on here. But it does seem like Link may be freeing Ganon, while also getting the power of whatever the hand is.
I don't imagine if he is freeing Ganon, I don't imagine it's intentional. I think it's maybe, as is so often used in games, a sort of a whoops, accidentally unleash the ultimate evil on the world. Sorry, guys.
Well, it's interesting, too, because I noticed Link has taken... I haven't gotten to skip back enough to see, but it looks like Link isn't wearing a glove on that other hand, and that seems intentional. So I wonder if there's... And this could be going off on some crazy, weird direction, but maybe there's some reason that they would have wanted to free Ganon. Maybe there's some other malevolent force that they need to take down, which sounds kind of cheesy, but that sounds crazy that they'd end up teaming up with him, but it does, looking back on it, it seems like this was, they had intentions of doing that. And maybe not. I hope not. I hope that they didn't want to go down here to unleash him, but we don't know, right?
It'll be interesting to see how they power Link down as well, because we see in these scenes, he has the Master Sword right now, which likely means this is at the start of the game, because they're probably going to somehow, maybe he loses all his hearts, loses his equipment or something. But this is the Link that has, he died 100 years ago. That's how they powered him down the first time. We spent over like 300 hours with this guy now. He's a big force to be reckoned with. How are they going to get rid of all that? Are they just going to act like none of that ever happened? Back down to 3 hearts again? Because he still has the Master Sword.
It's possible. It may well be that, from a plot point of view, it is the arm that drains or something, but I don't... The thing about the arm is that it doesn't look like it's some sort of object or something. It looks like it belongs to someone, because we see there's this one shot with a silhouette which has been shared God knows how many times, where Ganon, or who presumably is Ganondorf, the same arm, it appears, reaching out towards his chest and him in some sort of mild agony, but it looks like that there's a body attached to that arm. Is it one of the Sheikah monks? Is it, an entirely new character? Is that Ganondorf? And actually, Ganondorf is Yoshi. Less likely, that one.
Could happen.
But, stranger things have happened. One thing that was really interesting is during the trailer, we do see... There's a point where it appears that Link grabs Zelda's arm at one point, just presumably stopped from falling, and then we see that arm, that same arm, the spectral one, grabbing Link or Zelda. I think it's Link's arm to stop him from falling. So is it like, Zelda falls and Link grabs Zelda's arm to try and stop her from falling, but stumbles himself and then the arm saves him? And if so... why? And who does the arm belong to, and why are the nails so long?
There's so much talk about arms here.
Whoa.
Maybe Link Arms 2 is going to get announced, and Link's going to be a playable character. He's going in this game, he's going to have stretchy arms, yeah, just like Lanky.
This isn't even a trailer for Breath of the Wild 2, it's just Arms 2.
What's interesting as well is they've redesigned Zelda to give her shorter hair, and ever since this trailer came out, I've seen people speculate that might be to get rid of clipping, because maybe Zelda could be playable, and because of the different costumes you wear, hair would often clip through the bottom of those costumes, so making her hair shorter could avoid that.
I do like that idea. I really like the idea of Zelda being playable. It's one of those things where it could just as easily be a purely stylistic choice. But it is one of those things where you sort of think, maybe.
I've seen people say that this Zelda's more of a scientist and not a fighter, and while that may have been true in the story of the first Breath of the Wild, time has moved on since then. Maybe she's trained up. She's the princess now. Or is she the queen, actually? The king of Hyrule's dead. Is she now the queen of Hyrule?
Oh, that's a good point. I don't know how hierarchy works in Zelda. Feel free to let us know how it works in the comments below.
Right. I could see if she is the queen, I could see it being a little interesting that both her and Link are off with like some Hylian ox down in a dungeon cave thing exploring alone. But if she's also the queen, she can do whatever she wants, right? So there's that.
I do wonder, sort of coming from the angle of Zelda being more of a scientist, this could well be some sort of caves that suddenly have become unearthed underneath Hyrule Castle, and they're like, oh, what's going on down here? And whoops, Ultimate Evil's down here. That's a bit of a bummer. I mean, it's a fairly sort of, it's not a terribly original idea, but it works at least. And I think it would be a perfectly fine way to set things up. And we haven't even talked about the fact that that Hyrule Castle starts rocketing into the air at the end, or at least raising up. It's hard to tell if it's floating or if there's, it's kind of like a shrine. Maybe it's... Oh, what if Hyrule Castle is kind of like this gargantuan Sheikah shrine? It has the same properties. So it raises up out of the ground. And what if there's that with a load of things, which is what changes the landscape? There's all these hidden things underground that raise up, and I've hit on something and it's made my brain tingle.
What if it flies up into outer space?
Well, it's hard to say how they're going to change the world in this, right? Because we see Hyrule at the very end of the trailer. I think we're looking up from the Great Plateau, and the world looks the same. So, yeah, are they literally going to change the entire world before our eyes as Hyrule Castle raises up? I think they have said in passing that this takes place in Hyrule still. So people have speculated whether it's going to be the exact same world or not. I don't think that's going to be the case. Because we're following up Breath of the Wild. You can't just do the same location again. So I reckon, like Alex said, they're probably going to change a lot about this game. Probably coming off from the reaction it causes with these new towers unearthing from the ground.
Yeah, I could see. So do you think that we're going to be doing a lot more exploring underground, kind of like, what we see in this trailer potentially, or that, dungeons are going to unearth from random parts of the underground that have been long forgotten and thought that they were all closed up or something? I'm curious where they go with that.
I think that's entirely possible. The idea that the dungeons, the major dungeons in the game, do rise up out of the ground and cave systems appear and things like that. That'd be a great way. I mean, I really hope they do change kind of like the topography and the just the landscape overall through some means or another, whether it's due to earthquakes or something like that, but something to change things up so it's not just the same landscape. But by adding caves and cave systems underneath, that would be an incredible amount of, if you'll pardon the pun, depth added to the environment. And I tell you one thing I'm really hoping we get to do. I hope we get to dive underwater.
Yes.
Because that's something that when I played, we brought this up in another video recently, Immortals, you can dive underwater in that. Great mechanic, and it is sadly not present in Breath of the Wild, as no doubt everyone knows. So I'd love to see that. That would be a great way of opening things up with, I don't want to say no effort, but overall less effort than making another game.
There's a glitch in Breath of the Wild where you can see under the water, like you literally sink under, and underneath the ocean layer, there is way more detail than you'd think there would be. There's fishes you can't usually see under the water, there's coral down there, so it's like they almost designed it to be seen, but you can never really see it like that.
Interesting.
So I wonder if that was the case at some point. And if so, what an exciting thing they could do to build upon the exploration of Zelda. Like being able to go under the water and see a whole new civilization down there. Maybe there's more you can do with the Zoras down there too.
Right, bring back Zora races, and maybe you could maybe certain areas would flood over as well, and you'd be able to explore them in kind of a new changed light as well.
That's something we haven't actually talked about yet, is characters returning. Obviously we know Link's in it, we know Zelda's in it. We know that there are some birds that flutter away when Hyrule Castle starts to fly up. They're key. But apart from that, we don't know. Is Sidon going to return? Any of the other characters, like the Goron one, who I've forgotten the name of because Daruk completely outshines him. Are these characters going to return? What new characters are we going to get? And why hasn't Cass already been revealed? Because it's absolutely imperative that he's in the game.
It's hard to say, isn't it? 'Cause I never felt like the new champions ever had the spotlight of the older ones, and maybe this is a chance to really, bolster them up. But I hope it's a new cast rather than relying too much on Breath of the Wild 1. One thing I am wondering, though, from a character perspective, is this game going to open with Link waking up? Because almost every Zelda game does. In A Link to the Past, you share a house with your uncle, you have one bed, and you're asleep in that bed. In Ocarina of Time, you wake up in your bed. In Breath of the Wild, you even wake up in your stasis tube. Are we going to wake up in this game?
Well, no, because they said it's closer to, they said it's darker than Majora's Mask, and in Majora's Mask, you're on a horse.
That's true.
So I think it's definitely going to open with Link and Zelda on that ox bison thing. 100%. They're going to be in the woods and there's going to be a Skull Kid wearing Majora's Mask. That last part, maybe not. But, no. It's strange how you see these constant tropes in games. So I'm kind of hoping they do mix it up a little bit, but I wouldn't be opposed to Link getting out of bed in the morning.
I mean, Breath of the Wild's all about mixing up traditions, right? And if anything the sequel does, I want them to just try and not be Breath of the Wild again. Because while that still would be good, they have a lot to live up to. They have a lot to mix up here. And it's hard to even predict how they're going to do that. We'll of course try to, but I want them to just do something that's going to blow our socks off.
Yeah, and speaking of new mechanics, is there anything that you've seen in past Zelda games or other games, I guess, that you'd like to see Nintendo kind of try to take a stab at with Breath of the Wild 2?
Loft wings, Xeon! Oh. I want to fly! I want loft wings from Skyward Sword to come back, and I want to fly with them. I think this could break the game. That's one problem.
Yeah, I think it would trivialize the landscape.
Yeah, I think you have to limit them to some extent. Like maybe loftwings can be an extension of horses. They can be sky horses. But you also you can't just fly everywhere with them because that's going to trivialize climbing. It's going to make a lot of traversal just far too easy.
Sure.
But if they can find some way to limit like their stamina or make it so you can't just go anywhere with them, I think that would be a fun extension of movement.
Yeah, I was trying to think right now if they couldn't like make a barrier because you haven't climbed this mountain, you can't fly up here, but that would kind of break the immersion of the entire game. What were you gonna say, Alex?
On the subject of movement, there's been wild speculation about Link and his arm and stuff like that and what it could mean. And, is that gonna, I'm sure some people have speculated that it means that you only get to use the Master Sword and there's no weapon durability anymore. I think the weapon durability is definitely going to come over. But what I really hope, because, in fact, hang on, I'm just going to double check which of his arms it is, because I'm fairly certain I know, but I do want to double check, because I'd hate to make a mockery of myself.
I think it's his right one, isn't it? Let's see.
Let me just... No, I've gone too far. I need to double check. Come on, Alex. Oh, yep, it's his right arm. And Link in Breath of the Wild is...
He's right-handed.
He's right-handed, damn it.
He is, you're right.
Okay, so that theory... Well, I suppose that theory doesn't go out the window, because what I was originally going to say is that maybe this arm could be in relation, because it could well be an extension of, like, the Sheikah Runes, or more excitingly, if there's more underground stuff, maybe some sort of grappling arm? So that you can you can grapple onto the ceiling with it, and you can't use a weapon when doing it, so it's limiting. You can kind of like swing off and then maybe get your bow out, kind of like jumping off a horse. But sort of you can grapple using that arm. It can like stretch out or something and grapple up at this big shaft of light. And you can swing from the ceilings and the canopies, and it allows you to have this wealth of movement, and there could be loads of other moves incorporated with that as well. Like, I know we mentioned arms earlier, but as sort of a classic move in arms is to use the arms to jump. It doesn't really happen in game, but it's shown in a lot of media, like Min Min in Smash Bros. You could use that for an extra high jump. Maybe it uses some sort of energy or something, or it has a recharge, but you can do a super high jump by smashing the arm into the ground and launching yourself up, and maybe there's a shockwave that stuns foes or something. I'm getting into specifics now, but I do think that there could be all manner of really interesting things with this arm, and I really hope it's movement, because the movement is good in Breath of the Wild. It could be even better, though. Can you imagine it being even better? How lovely would that be?
I mean, there is something to be said about, like why it's fun to play Spider-Man in video games. Not every Spider-Man game, but just being able to like freely fly
Breath
around.
Breath of the Wild 2 is Spider-Man.
Exactly. I mean, and I still haven't played the demo yet, but Monster Hunter Rise has a similar mechanic, right? Where you can kind of hurl yourself around the map with your ninja blade. I don't know what it is. But yeah, I could see Breath of the Wild doing something like that, as long as it doesn't overpower the ideas of riding around a horse or even just exploring on your own. As long as it's a fun addition to the game, which I could see them doing that, honestly. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it would overpower it, because certainly Breath of the Wild 1, 99% of the game is above ground. You know, it's if you're grappling on, you realistically need to grapple upwards. Otherwise, what's the point? So it would need to be some sort of ceiling there, and, you know, shrines and everything. You could say it would completely break them, but you could just as easily make it so that you can't grapple except in certain places in shrines, in the same way that you can't climb anywhere except certain places in shrines. You know, it's not a difficult thing to overcome.
Sure.
I do wonder how much time has passed since the first game, because if it's been a while, that means a lot of towns which were ruins in Breath of the Wild 1 are going to be fully established in this one. And we saw that a little bit in Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, like with Hyrule Castle. The full castle town was established in that game. But I want to fully see that in a fully explorable Zelda game. There's so many like landmarks out there which are just destroyed ruins. Can you imagine if this game is just full of towns? Because Breath of the Wild 1 had a few towns, and a lot of them were memorable, but they were few and far between, which was fine for the design of that game, but I wonder if this is going to be a lot more robust.
I'd be really down for that. I want to see how big Tarrytown is now. I'm sorry to bring it up yet again, Xeon, but
It's okay.
Tarrytown, you know, can you imagine if Tarrytown is now, just because it's not destroyed and everything, it becomes the hub of Hyrule? You know, it's the big market area, because everywhere else is like a village, but Tarrytown has got, you know, it can expand. It could be this huge, like, you know, it's on an island, so maybe it could be this huge sort of like tall metropolis or something. They've always loved playing with verticality, so I'd love to see something like that. Or who knows, maybe it didn't work out and that's the only place that's in ruins now and everywhere else is fine.
Remember too, Breath of the Wild 1 is a Wii U game, so now we're on the Switch, we're not held back by the Wii U anymore. So there's a chance that the visuals of this game and the scale of it could be even broader. Like, I'm imagining if Castle Town is fully established again, it could be like Twilight Princess, where there's NPCs just littering everywhere. Like, they were just going about their day and being jolly. You couldn't really do that in Breath of the Wild, because it had to have limits. All towns only have like a few NPCs on screen at a time.
We could even finally get HD Rumble. Can you imagine?
It's hilarious the first game didn't do that.
They wanted the games, they wanted both versions to be the same, which I get, but at the same time it's like, come on, it's just a bit of Rumble.
And I think if that's the town aspect is one thing that if Breath of the Wild sequel 2.5 HD remix decides not to explore the underground or some new area as much, I think that's one big way that the game can expand and make it much more different than the original, is by, you know, showing us how the towns have evolved and giving us more of a larger town to explore and get lost in. Because I do agree that I think the town in Hyrule Castle in Twilight Princess was one of the most fun areas to explore back in the day. It just felt like a bigger version of the town in Ocarina of Time, and there was so much to go do, and it was a great time, and I'd love to see something like that return.
I wonder what the looming presence is going to be. Because in Breath of the Wild, no matter where you look, the majority of the time, you can see Hyrule Castle in the distance with the malice just, like, foaming off the top of it. It looks like we freed Ganon, right? Is he just going to be sealed again the entire game waiting for us to fight him? Because if so, that's very similar to the first one. And it just occurred to me, like, what if we have to free Ganon? Like, what if we have no choice? What if there's some other evil and we need his help or something? Right. Because I'm just wondering what the incentive is about this. Because if we're just waiting to fight Ganon again, that's just so in the footsteps of the first game.
I'm hoping. I mean, I'm not banking on there being a greater evil, because the whole sort of point of Zelda and the plot line and everything is the fact that Ganon is the ultimate evil. Ganondorf, you know, whichever form he takes, he is the ultimate evil, and this may well be like the body left behind, because obviously we have the malice in the first game of Ganon. You know, that's why he's flying around and everything, and this may well be the actual corpse of him. And so there may well be some difference in that regard. I'm not saying he's going to be good, because at the end of the day, it's Ganondorf, but, you know, there's a lot that they could do with it. I'm not holding my breath, because, you know, it's you know, it's The Legend of Zelda. It's a mainline Zelda game. They're generally not crazy with changing up the formula. It's usually the case that if they do have a new villain, it's a villain who is secondary to Ganon.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got Zant and stuff like that. It never seems to be the primary focus, and Ganon's always like, aha, it was me all along, whilst we're starting with Ganondorf this time, which is, now that I think about it, I don't think we've ever had any game which presumably starts with Ganondorf being released. Usually he's out and about already, sort of milling around, or it happens, kind of midway through the game. So this is, this is going to be interesting. But what about the, I know I touched on it briefly, but what about the Sheikah Runes? Because, we're going to have to get some more. I can't see the Sheikah Slate not being a part of this game. It might not be, but it was so integral to the gameplay of the previous one, I can't see them dropping it. But we're going to have to get some new runes, and, I have absolutely no idea what they could do with it. But what about you guys? You got any thoughts?
I want a fresh slate. It's hard to imagine a Zelda game without bombs, and I can't see them getting rid of bombs. But I feel like, because this is a sequel, I want a new tool set. And if they just give us the same runes again, it's going to start feeling quite familiar. And they could just build upon that, but are we getting too complex then? Because there's already quite a few there. So I think what I want is just something entirely new. As for what that is, I can't even begin to fathom what it could be.
I could really see if they do decide to take the two-player route and make this a co-op game with Zelda being playable, or even just make it where you can switch between the two characters on the fly. I could see Zelda being stuck with the slate, and she, uses that kind of similarly. Maybe
that's a good idea.
And then maybe Link has a new moveset, possibly based on that hand that clings to his body. And maybe he does get to grapple around the place, and maybe he can pull enemies towards him. And who knows what the possibilities are with that? And I'm excited as well, just like you guys are, to just be surprised by this game. And but yeah, I have no idea.
Can you imagine the potential of having two characters? Like, one character has provided us with over 300 hours of gameplay. Having two, like being able to explore the world, go to the exact same place with two different characters, and somehow have a different experience and to do two different things, that opens up a realm of possibilities.
And one thing I really liked a lot about Immortals was, I know that the part of the best part about part of the best part about Breath of the Wild really is the immersion, getting lost in the world and feeling like you're really there. And you don't have people trying to talk to you unless if they're actual NPCs in the game. You don't have, like a companion constantly bothering you. But I think in Immortals, the way that you see the two kind of, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the word. Do you guys remember the names of the two characters from Immortals that talk to you? It's like Zeus and Zeus and Prometheus.
Zeus and
okay,
yes, that's it.
So the way that Zeus and Prometheus both kind of banter while you're exploring on your quests, I don't really want something like that to happen. But I'd love to see Zelda sort of just talk with Link while they're out exploring, when they see, a shrine that they haven't explored, potentially, if that's the way that the game wants to go that route, or talk about a town that they're approaching, or see, a squirrel over there, and see them all running around together. Just comment on the world. And I would love to see that, we probably wouldn't get the back and forth because Link doesn't speak, but I would love to hear from Zelda more often, and just have just to make the game a little bit more different than the base Breath of the Wild.
I was so worried when you brought up Zeus and Prometheus that you were going to say that that's what you wanted, and I was like, oh God, do not. I hated that part.
Yeah, I really wish Din and Nehru would just comment on your journey the whole time when you're exploring, and they would speak about the legends of Hyrule and the past descendants, and oh my gosh, wow, absolutely what I want.
And then Link and Zelda stepped forth. What do you mean they stepped forth? They stepped forth with their feet. Ha ha ha. Like, that was the quality of the writing.
While that was going on, I thought of something that I really want. And it's something that was kind of in Breath of the Wild 1, but not really. So you have a camera in that game, right? And you can take pictures of things for your encyclopedia, and that's great. But when you actually use it for picture purposes, those pictures suck. You've got a giant grainy border with lines over it, and you can't use those pictures to post online. And Breath of the Wild's a beautiful world. You can take selfies with it too, but the pictures just don't look good. What I want is a proper photo mode in this game. I'm thinking like Odyssey, like the brand new 3D World photo mode, just something that lets us properly admire and share how beautiful this game can be.
I can just imagine a cutscene in the opening where Zelda says, "There, I've upgraded your Sheikah slate. The images it takes will be much clearer now for you to share on Miiverse or
and they
something."
will contain filters. And speaking of the photo mode being more enhanced and hopefully the photos just looking more impressive, that's one thing that when Eiji Aonuma and the team announced Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, they basically came back and said, hey, Breath of the Wild sequel is still in the works, and we're doing everything we can to make this game more impressive than the original. And that's one thing that I know we touched on very lightly, but I'm just so excited to see how much better this game is going to look than the original Breath of the Wild. Because I recently posted on Twitter that I think that Breath of the Wild is the best looking game on Switch, and some people argued and said, oh, well, Mario Odyssey, and look at Luigi's Mansion 3, and they're absolutely right. Those games...
Oh, Luigi's Mansion 3.
Yeah, they ooze with detail. And so I'm so excited just to see how Breath of the Wild expands on its already insane color palette and amount of detail. And because, you know, they tried to pare down the game probably a little bit just to run on both systems so well. And like you said, not make them different, but just the possibilities. And it's Nintendo, you know, they are the wizards of the Switch. So... Breath of the Wild 2 is probably going to be the best looking game on Switch, hopefully.
I'm with you too, Xeon. I feel like Breath of the Wild 1, it definitely has muddy textures every now and then, but when everything comes together as a whole, the artistic vision is strong. And yeah, like Luigi's Mansion 3, more detailed, better animated, sure. But Breath of the Wild, when the lighting hits when the lighting gets to the right point and everything just shines, it looks amazing. There's nothing quite like it.
Yeah, the game constantly wants to stop you in your tracks and make you just soak in the emotions of being in the world, and not many games capture that well. It's insane.
I've seen PS4 games, and I suppose even to a degree PS5 games, that whilst they are certainly higher in fidelity, it's, as you say, it's the artistic vision, it's the art style, it's the application, and it's about way more than just pixels and polygons, in the same way that people have been saying for years about the Wind Waker. The Wind Waker still looks great even on an original system, and I think Breath of the Wild will still look great, you know, in 20 years' time. But Breath of the Wild 2, they've got a chance to do something even better with it, and if they keep the same artistic vision, but then add in even more fidelity, oh, it's gonna get tingles running down people's knees.
The most sensuous part of a body.
And on that note, I think we better wrap things up, because we've been at it for some time. But let us know your thoughts down there in the comments. What do you want to see in Breath of the Wild 2? What do you think we will see? What do you think we won't see? What do you see? Let us know down there in the comments. And as all that's left for me to say is thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you grab that subscribe button in the chest and hold it there for probably several thousand years, and be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. I don't know why I did that. What were you going to say, Alex?
Sorry, I had to burp.